Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for this live conversation on mental health. Today, I am happy to welcome back Dr. Suzanne Boyer from our ChristianaCare Behavioral Health team and Dr. Stacey Boyer from ChristianaCare's WorkLife Wellbeing. You both have the similar initials and similar names, and it gets me every time, but thank you both so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
So obviously mental health has become such a global conversation. And if any of you, while you're watching, have any questions that you'd like either of our experts to answer today, please feel free to leave those in the chat and we will get to them throughout our conversation. And if we can't get to them today, both of our experts here are happy to answer your comments via a comment once we close out. So obviously, I've invited both of you here today because mental health is such a global conversation, specifically because of what Simone Biles is currently doing at the Olympics, taking some time working on her own mental health and stepping back from such a global stage. And, we've all seen so many of the responses and so many of the comments, some good, some bad, but some calling her a quitter and saying that she's weak and she just can't handle it. But from a mental health perspective, what would you say to that?
So I could certainly see how we have a history with elite athletes pushing through and sacrificing a lot, particularly in Olympic settings. And while I understand that, I think this was really an act of absolute bravery on her part, because she opens our eyes to the possibility that we can proactively notice our own healthy needs and act on them, even in some of the most high pressure, high stakes situations. And by doing that, by noticing our healthy needs, acting on them proactively, we not only help ourselves, but we can potentially help others like her teammates and really setting an example around the world. The saying that she really brought to mind for me is that just because we can do something, and she really could do these things very well, although perhaps might have been injured if she had continued. So just because we can do something doesn't mean that we should, nor does it mean that we have to.
Right.
Yeah, and you bring up the team aspect, Stacey. I think that's really important, that she's a member of a team, and she, in stepping down and allowing another team member to take her spot, she owned that this was hers and the consequences of her decision, right? That she could have impacted her team, and they may or may not do better without her on the team, but that there are consequences to every decision that we make, and this was hers to make, and to accept whatever comes from that, whether she has the opportunity to come to another Olympics, whether she has the opportunity to compete in other aspects of the competition. She owned that for herself and made that decision without sort of putting the onus on somebody else, that this was fully her decision. And I thought that that was incredibly brave as well.
So how can we do that in our own lives? How can we make sure we're safeguarding our mental health on what is obviously a very different stage?
Sure. And I think Stacey said it. It's important to be proactive, right? And we've said this in lots of our conversations over time, is building in self-care to your routine and making it part of your life is so important. So many of us think of self-care as an afterthought. When I have time, then I'm going to get that yoga class, or yes, I should eat right, but I need to do this other thing. I don't have time for all that sleep. And we really need to be doing those things that our parents have always told us to do, or doctor has always told us to do, and make that part of a regular routine. I recently read an article where Christy Brinkley even said that her one non-negotiable portion of her day was to practice gratitude and to acknowledge those things that you are grateful for in your life, because that brings around positivity and increased enjoyment of your life.
And I think that this idea of gratitude is absolutely crucial. And I combine it with this element of self-compassion, of talking to ourselves as we would a friend, because oftentimes we are not kind to ourselves. We do not say nice things to ourselves, and we treat ourselves very differently than we would if a friend, say, came to us who is struggling. So one of the questions that I would ask you all is to think about if a friend called you and said that they were having a very difficult time and they needed to talk to you every day for 30 days, how much time do you realistically think that you could commit to them? In my life right now, it might be 5 minutes. And that's what I could realistically commit. I'm a mom, I'm working, and that's what I can do right now. Each of you may have your magic number. And the question I have for you all is, can you take that number and apply it to yourself? Can you say, oh, I'm going to spend that 5 minutes on myself each day? And I'd like to give you a little bit of a framework to think about if you are struggling to prioritize self-care or thinking about your well-being in your daily life. And that is what's called the before, during, after plan. So if you work outside the home or inside the home, what do you do before you begin your day? What are those little things? Even for me in my personal life, I have a specific mug that I love, that I just love the way it feels in my hand that I drink my coffee with. And if I don't have that mug, it sort of throws me off a little bit. It's a small thing, but it's something that I do for me. And there might be little things like that that you can do for you before you begin your day. Maybe it's having something yummy to eat or something that warm and comforting to drink. Maybe it's taking a few deep breaths. Maybe it's brushing your teeth and thinking about things that you need to do for the day. And then what can you do throughout the day? Each time that you wash your hands, taking a few deep breaths, making sure that you have touch points with friends that you can laugh with. Who are your people that you go to have dark humor with, or that you go to cry, or who are your people in your life that you can go to throughout the day, or that you can even just send a text message to or whatnot. And then what can you do to unwind as your day is coming to a close? And I think that's a really great time to weave back in what Suzanne's saying of gratitude, where you think of even one good thing that happened to you that day when you're brushing your teeth at night. There's so many different ways to be creative with it. With self-care, I hate to be prescriptive. So it's really about you figuring out what works for you and then thinking about a structure. So it's like, you don't even have to think about it anymore. If it's already a plan that you've made, this before, during, and after plan, you can just go to it and just pick some things. You don't even have to, go through your mind to try to find them.
And at what point is it too much? If you're doing the journaling and you're doing the gratitude and you have these routines, but similar to Simone Biles, you end up with the twisties, or something is really setting you off, even if you are doing all of those things. When is it time to take that larger step back?
Yeah, so I think that it's important to know yourself, right? And in this day and age, I think people are becoming more used to doing that and noticing yourself. Are you getting more irritated than normal? Are you sleeping more or less? Or have your eating habits changed, right? Are you feeling different? Are you acting different than you have been in the past? And are people checking in on you more? Okay, like, you need to talk. And taking that step back and reflecting on yourself a little bit to see, wow, I actually really am really irritable. I'm not okay. And those are the opportunities to either seek that support, maybe from a friend, have that time to yourself. Maybe you do need to talk to a friend. Maybe you need to talk to somebody professionally. But to be able to be aware enough of your own needs to notice when you need a little bit more.
And sometimes it's hard for us to notice that in the moment. And this is where our friends and family and loved ones come into play that know us well, that can say, you are really Netflix binging a lot. And or when's the last, we know that you like to read, but we haven't seen you reading. When's the last time you read a book? Or there's just some things that we sometimes don't necessarily notice in ourselves, because oftentimes folks are really helping others in their lives, which is great. And we can tend to put our needs later. And so other people can really help us, call attention to that. And we may even notice in ourselves that we feel really irritable sometimes, and that we're not sleeping as well. Those are two real hallmarks that I look for when I'm working with folks is, how are you feeling internally? How's your sleep going? Is it hard to fall asleep? Is it hard to stay asleep? These are kind of telltale signs that we may need to kind of take a step back, think how we're doing, and see what we need to shift in our lives.
And let's flip that. What if you think you are fine, but you have friends or family who you're starting to realize, maybe a little bit off, haven't, avid book reader who stopped reading, whatever the case may be. What should you say? What should you do to try to get through to that person?
Yeah, I think that can be really challenging sometimes, because there are those moments where people are really struggling, but maybe if they don't know it yet, right? They and aren't ready to say, like, I really need help. I think it's important to offer that shoulder or that ear, and not to push, right? Hey, can you talk? Maybe we can get coffee. Sort of offer it in this really open way, and to let them know that you're there to support them, in the way that they need it, right? Because the support that they might need may not be the support that you would need in that situation, right? I'm a talker. I want somebody that will listen to everything that I have to say, and I will talk for a long time. My husband, for instance, is not a talker, and that is not the support that he would need, right? And so knowing that you may have to be flexible in somebody else's needs, and to do that in the best way that you can, while also being aware that some people may need more than you can give. So you have to be able to have the self-awareness of, this may be too much, and I need to help connect you with the right resources that really can help you in the way that you need.
Yeah, I think Suzanne's talking about knowing our own limits, and it's okay to have our boundaries, even when we are helping someone that we love. And that's important, because if we sort of tap our own resources out, then we can't be there to adequately support the person that we really want to help. And I think, it is important that we take inventory to consider, what is it that we are good at as a friend or as a loved one. And it may not be, like Suzanne is saying, talking a lot, or you may be the person that someone can laugh with, or that someone can do an activity with, or that someone can call to walk their dog, right? I have a good friend who, doesn't really like kids that much, but I know in a heartbeat, they are the person to call if I need dogs walked, because they love dogs, and that's something that they can do, and they can do well. And we each have our strengths like that. So I think beginning to consider that, our boundaries, and then also just a couple things I want to say about how we talk to our friends and loved ones, that we can say to someone, what can I do to best support you in this moment? That doesn't mean it's long-term. It's in this moment when I'm with you, what can I do to best support you? And what do you most need right now? And then if what they most need in that moment you can't provide, then you can help get them to someone like Suzanne's saying, someone, or help them find someone else in their life that is able to do that for them. And then you're also in a position where you can really validate their experience. And I think that validation is something we don't talk about nearly enough. And I know Suzanne works with kids. And so I think about this with kiddos all the time, that we really need to provide a lot of validation and a lot of praise. And I wish that we would weave that into our adult relationships much more. And so I'm thinking about that all the time when I'm interacting with folks, of how can I shine a bright spotlight on the things that this person is feeling, and that's going well in some ways. And so I might say something like, of course you are really struggling and you feel stressed right now. You are a single parent caring for these children, working beyond full time and trying to do it all. And anyone in your situation would feel that way. So you're recognizing their experience and recognizing that, normalizing it, that anyone would feel that way. Now, if you find yourself turning into the Nike ad of just do it, just do this, just do that, and you're in sort of problem solving, fix it mode, if that person wants that, great. But most of the time people don't. And so if you find yourself turning into that Nike ad, be careful, because you're not validating at that point. So those are kind of quick little hints that I would call attention to in those kind of conversations.
So you mentioned kids and the validation of making sure that, kids are feeling that way. Suzanne, we've had many conversations over the past, 16 months about dealing with kids' mental health. Kids are also watching the Olympics. they're hearing about Simone Biles. They're hearing Michael Phelps talking in a lot of these interviews about, it's okay to not be okay. How do you continue that conversation with the kids in your life so that they understand?
Yeah, we have talked about this a lot, and I think the theme that I keep coming back to is kids are people too, right? So we might need to change the language that we're using when we're talking to kids, right? We need it to be something that is understandable to them and approachable to them. The concepts are still the same, right? So I teach my kids all the time, it's important to take care of yourself. It's important that if something is too much, you take a step back, you ask for help, you take a breath, but then you try again, right? If it's a task that's really hard, or you get somebody to help you complete that. If this isn't I think with Simone, right? I have kiddos and they were playing baseball. And at one point it was like, this is not for me. And we talked about that it's not for you. And it doesn't have to be for you. That doesn't mean you've quit. That doesn't mean that you've given up. It means that you've tried something and you gave it your all and you realized your limit, right? For something like trying to explain what's going on with Simone, I try to relate it to an example in their own life. Have you ever had a moment where something was really, really hard, or you just felt like it wasn't right, or you couldn't do it? What did you do? You took a step back. You asked for help. You tried to take care of yourself. That's what Simone did. And she's trying to make sure that she's healthy and that her mind is healthy, her body is healthy, so that she can be happy and have the life that she wants, and also be there for her friends, because it's important for her to be there for her friends too. They're a team. And I think that that's really relatable. And that's exactly what we're talking about. It's just in the context that my kids particularly, or kids that I would talk to, would relate to more.
So we do have one submitted question ahead of time. So how can we access mental health services if our copays are more than we can afford, or if we don't have insurance? So what maybe free resources or kind of free day-to-day things that you can do would you recommend?
That's a very good question and hard to answer in some respects, because I think I'm not fully aware of all the resources that are available in our state. There are some, there's obviously a lot of things online. I think people are doing videos like this, right, that hopefully help folks out. I also think that there are some programs that through the state, and depending on your particular history and issues that you may qualify for, that would cover any sort of treatment for a certain amount. Like there's something that we call CCAP and VCAP for folks who are survivors of crime or interpersonal traumas. And there are, I think, a number of services that are becoming available that are lower cost. And I'm even thinking about some of the apps and things of that nature.
I think too, maybe even researching things like support groups or community groups of people that have similar experiences. Now, it's not professional help, right? So it wouldn't be led necessarily by a therapist or something, but oftentimes just having that moment of shared experience that, like Stacey was saying, normalizing it, right? I'm not the only one experiencing this. There are other people that are going through this. I think that has been really helpful in a number of circumstances. Certainly during the pandemic, it was really helpful for people to understand that their experience of the pandemic was not singular, that many other people experienced that. But victims of trauma also have that experience, victims or people who suffer depression or anxiety, just to know there's nothing fundamentally wrong with you. This is how you're experiencing this, and other people experience it too. And maybe they have tips about how they have dealt with their symptoms, or maybe they are just that buddy that goes on a walk with you that gets it and you don't really have to explain it. You could just walk, and that's okay.
I think that I love that point, Suzanne. And I think that the Delaware chapter of the National Association for Mental Illness, NAMI, has groups available, like a bunch of them right now, that I think are very high quality. And there's also mental health advocates and peers that you could connect with, that could be really helpful.
Well, thank you both for answering that question. We don't have any more submitted questions right now, but I wanted to get your take on the phrase, it's okay to not be okay. I heard Michael Phelps say it on an Olympic coverage, as recently as last night, and it's kind of trending a little bit right now. Is that what you would use? I know we've worked on a few other things as well, but what is your response to that kind of saying?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for folks who really feel okay after what we've all experienced in the past year and a half, I mean, good job. The vast majority of us, it has not felt that way. And so I think now is a really great example of that if we can be authentic with this and say, it really is okay to not be okay. And it's okay that I don't feel okay, because this has been a really challenging time. The pandemic is sort of an equalizer in some respects, that I hope that people will take that away from this situation of, we all have needs. And I think in various aspects of our cultures, it can be that we need to look like we are invincible. You don't show weakness. In medicine, it's sink or swim in some ways when you're a trainee. And we need to be able to say, it's okay to not be okay, and I'm not okay right now. And there's a lot of power that comes with that. And like I said in the beginning, when we're talking about Simone, is that she didn't just help herself, she helped so many others. And I think that the reality is that if we look at things like depression and anxiety, they are just as common as some of the most prevalent medical issues that people experience. But how often do we talk about these things?
Right.
And
why we're having this conversation today.
It's very important.
Sorry, I stepped on you a little bit, Stacey. The reason why I kind of paused when you asked that question was, yes, I think it's absolutely okay to not be okay, and it's okay to not want to stay in that place. And I was trying to think of a way to articulate that it's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to ask for help to get out of that place so that you can feel okay again. Right. And that we all, like Stacey saying, we all go through these times where life is really challenging, and that there are resources out there. There are people out there to help you out of it. And one of the challenges, I think, like you're pointing in our culture, is not only do you have to look perfect, but it's really hard for many people to first say, I'm not okay, and then say, can you help me with that? Because I can't do this by myself. I think that I would just say that needs to be the corollary, maybe, or like the follow-up, that it's okay to not be okay. It's okay to ask for help about it.
That's great. So how can anyone watching get help through your services, through ChristianaCare? How are we helping our community?
I could speak a little bit to ChristianaCare employees, that I want to remind everyone that we do have a Center for WorkLife Wellbeing, and it's here for a reason, and it's here to support you all. And we have various services available to our employees, like our employee assistance program through Aetna RFL. We have our health insurance that has benefits as well. And then we also have Vital Work Life for advanced practice clinicians and physicians. And all these services are in place for a reason. And if you ever get stuck and you need help connecting with someone, you can always feel free to reach out to the Center for Work-Life Wellbeing, and we will do our best to help you connect with someone. I do want to say, I'm sure Sam will have more to say about this, but right now is a time where people are saying they're not okay. In the community and worldwide, I think. And so there are few healthcare providers, few mental health providers that do not have a wait list right now. And so I want to prepare people for that if you find that you're trying to get in to see someone and it's going to take a few weeks, unless it's an emergency situation, of course, in which you would access help right away. But if it's not an emergency situation and you need it, there are other things that you can do in the meantime, like connecting with friends until you can get into that appointment, family, or going to your primary care physician and checking in with them. There are some options available, but I do want to put that out there, that the community is doing the best that it can right now to meet the needs, but nationwide, it's a struggle.
Absolutely. And I think in terms of those who are not employees necessarily of ChristianaCare, but our treatment community, we do have psychiatric services. So we have psychologists and psychiatrists in our behavioral health department. We have medication management and we have therapy available. Again, there may be somewhat of a wait depending on schedules and availability. And we also have embedded mental health practitioners in many of our primary care facilities. So if you, like Stacey is saying, if you go to your primary care physician and you're sharing some of this information, there may be an opportunity to have 1 or 2 sessions with a mental health professional who is part of that practice and can support the physician in that practice. And then if more treatment is needed, to connect you with further services that would be appropriate.
And I think it's important to note, please don't take that as, well, everyone's busy, I'm fine. Like, if you think you need help, please reach out and please go when you're able to go, and don't just blow it off because you think it'll be busy.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely.
And this is where we come back to Simone, right? That she was proactive.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would encourage everyone to be as proactive as you can be about yourself. So even if you think that, hey, I might want to check in with someone at some point, call and get the process started. And if you are already in that place where you say, I'm ready to seek some help beyond what I have in my supports already present, go ahead and call. And there may be some circumstances where you can, call a few people and see who has an opening.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both so much for all of that amazing information today. It's such an important topic, and one that I'm sure we will be revisiting in the near future. And if you're watching and have any other questions, please continue to submit them in the comments. We can get to them after this live. And there are also resources through ChristianaCare that are shared in the comments below if you're interested in learning more information. Thank you so much and have a great afternoon.